Chris, there's one thing I wanted to talk to you about because
Sure.
it's something my wife and I do as well, and that's being a caregiver for someone older. And I know that this, well, I should say, I've read that this was an impetus for you in the creation of your music and the start of your music career. What was it about being a caregiver that really kind of catapulted you to finally chase that dream?
Well, you know, I played music since I was, in like as a hobby kind of
Yeah,
thing. And my Oma was who I took care of, my Oma, my grandmother.
right.
And she wasn't she was afraid whenever I say I was going to play music. It was like I was going to rob a bank, she was like, "Hey, you know, Chris, you're going to she was from Holland, my dad was born in Holland. Anyway, she wanted me to have a good career, and music to her wasn't going to pay the bills,
Right.
so I think at one point she's like, "You're going to work at a gas station and someone's going to rob you." I'm like, "Oh, but that's a very specific, fear that you have for me." But she wasn't wrong. That was probably the kind of job I'd be allowed to have, to accommodate music. So what was interesting is that I was taking care of her there. I got the privilege of doing that. It was the biggest, and my grandfather too. My Opa was also there for a period of time, but it became difficult for me to care for them both because he was kind of wandering off on me and whatnot, and she was getting more ill and getting closer to the end. So um, he went up to live with my uncle up in northern Ontario, and I kept home at home. My father and I kind of switched off. Like I'd be on, it takes a lot for full time care,
Yep.
and then I'd go home to St. Catharines and rest and kind of recoup my energy, and then get back up there with her. And it was the biggest privilege. It was the best gift, and for her as well, I hope, because we were always very close. I mean, she was one of the most influential people in my life, and I would sing for her every day. I would sing Joni Mitchell. I would sing, Fleetwood Mac. I would sing whomever I felt like singing that day, and so it was like I was auditioning for her. And ooh, I'm going to get emotional, but as she was going, before she was still communicating, I was talking with her and I was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do after this, because I had taken a leave from work and I'd worked in sales a long time and office furniture stuff. And what am I going to do next? And she said, Chris, just play your music. And it
Wow.
was like, finally, she's like, nothing else is making you happy. Just play your music in her Dutch, just play your music. And I mean, from her, that was like, that was it. That was the whole deal, and that she was like, she gave me permission, that she felt safe with that. It was, and so I got this little PA system, and I had a friend in my hometown. He, booked me a little gig at a coffee shop or a little pub, I think it was. I had some friends come, and I was playing my songs I'd written, and then peppering in the covers, like more like playing the covers and peppering in my songs. And I did that, had that little PA my dad kind of invested in when I we were all done with Oma, and she'd moved on to the great reality. And so I was playing. I started playing like 3 shows a week at a bistro, one at a another, like a Sunday afternoon gig at a kind of a gastro pub in the town, and 2 or 3 shows a week. And that's where I came down to play the Cicada Fest, and I had 2 other shows that weekend. I had a private party, and then I had my bistro gig or something like that. And so I was booking shows. I was playing for tips sometimes. I was playing for like a small amount of money and tips, and but I was kind of putting it together. And then I played Cicada Fest, and I met this guy, and Alma was right.
Yeah.
And it's like she kind of sent him to me.
Yeah.
What is that? I text this guy, it's beautiful. Text him coming to Ontario. And I mean, they're behind it, all of it. There was all these other parts that were connecting with us, our story and our healing stuff. And as Adam was talking about, I don't want to go on too long, but that when he was talking about East Texas with you, see, when we met, we exchanged CDs. He got my little demo, and I got Live at Flipnotics, and that album changed my life.
Yeah.
And I was grieving all that, and I was tired and I was going through a bit of a hard time. And I was just listening to Live at Flipnotics on repeat. So much so that my buddy would pick me up to go to a show. We'd take my gear and he'd say, "You got your soother, Chrissy?" Because we put it in the disc player and in his truck, and no one talked. And we just listened to Adam Carroll. And he painted a vignette of East Texas and of Louisiana, places I'd never been before, but painted these stories
Yeah.
for me. And that that as we went, that's how it happened. But Oma, it was like unlocking a key. It was just like unlocking a lock. It's
Do you
just
ever
play it.
wonder if
Put your
she
kids.
hadn't kind of given you that permission almost, what would have happened? Like, you ever
I
wonder?
do. Because I also had a very strong intuition that I was 36, and I thought, if you're not going to do it now, you'll never do it.
Right.
You're just never going to do it. If you're getting a little long in the tooth already, that was my instinct. And then my buddy Charlie, who booked that coffee shop gig for me, or was a little, I think it was a little, anyway, it doesn't matter. Um, he had said, "Chris, you could treat it like a trade, just like a carpenter. You just go and get the jobs. Go, just treat it like a trade, just like a carpenter works." And it was like I locked that in and went, "Oh, I can do that."
Hmm.
So
That's hard
I
though when
mean,
the people above you didn't believe in it as a trade, right? Like when they're telling you that's not a real job. You need to get a real job, right? Like,
a lot of my whole life,
yeah,
like they were afraid. It makes people get afraid that you're
yeah,
going to throw your life away. You've got to get something serious, and they're not wrong
right.
because
I mean, the
I mean,
pandemic proved that, right? Like how
yeah,
essential. Yeah, yeah,
it is really like I tell little kids, I'm like, stay in school, go to college,
yeah.
get a career, get a degree, definitely because you got be a little left to center to take a risk because it is. I mean, it's feast or famine a lot
Yeah.
of the time. So
Um,
yeah.
let's get back to Adam. You mentioned a couple of names earlier in Lloyd Maines and Kent Finlay, and I also want to expound upon what Chris just mentioned about painting landscapes for people in song, which is just such an impressive thing that you're able to do, Adam. And I'm just a huge fan of that, and not just yours, but other songwriters that are able to do that as well. But because of the freedom of being an indie artist and a songwriter in the folk Americana genre, you're able to write whatever the hell you want, essentially. And I mean, you've painted a picture of tribute for folks like Kent Finlay and Lloyd Maines. What do those kind of songs mean to you when you're able to, write about the people that were important in your journey, like Lloyd and Kent?
Well, I think it just I think it means to me that Chris, I guess I would say that um, kind of gives me some perspective on um, the relationships I've been able to form in this uh, business. I guess um, that I didn't, that I feel fortunate to be able to have had, and I think that kind of thinking about back about growing up, how and I just always struggled to kind of find my spot in life, you know, which is a little more common than I thought, as I said, but I thought that I was the only one, and but anyway, I think that to come from that to where I just didn't know, I struggled thinking I wouldn't be able to make it. Just had some challenges growing up with learning and physical stuff, and um, you know I just had a hard time, and to know that I could, you know people like to look back on Kent and Lloyd and me and Chris, and um, and getting to do what I've been able to do so far. Um, I feel very, very fortunate because I certainly would never have imagined in my wildest, honestly, I seriously mean this. I could never even fathom getting to do what I've gotten to do, you know, you know, thinking as a kid, as a kid or a young adult, even, it blows me away, but so that's kind of what when I sing those songs, you know, you know, uh, and the one with Lloyd, is kind of a tribute to Lloyd, also to I kind of put other musicians in there who mean a lot to me.
Hmm.
Um, but the one with Kent is sort of the stuff that I wished I had, uh, been able to say to him while he was alive.
Yeah.
That I didn't get a chance to complete that conversation. And so when I can deliver that to an audience, and knowing that, whatever that means to those folks, that I can sincerely, deliver that emotion, and hopefully that, shows through. But he meant that, and Lloyd, obviously, to so many people. Kent meant that to a lot of songwriters,
Mm.
because he just loved songwriters, and in a way that I think that is very unique. Um, he didn't. Um, he just. I think most of us didn't really realize what we had until he's
We
gone.
we knew it, but you're
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And after looking back,
Because it's just left such a hole. I mean,
it's
such a hole
changed
in
a
that.
lot.
Yeah, and I mean, he was just such a force, and I think that yeah. So I
It was
think
sort of like an orbit. Everyone orbited around him. Because I came in at the end, but it was sort of like he was a connecting thread. That it was sort of like if you could, like a maypole type thing,
Like
where
a
it was
hub,
just
like a
a
hub.
hub.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and it was really him. It was, it wasn't really. I mean, Cheatham Street is
it
is
was
is a cool
him.
place, but it was him that was the hub. He just, and
He took an interest in everyone. Asked you what you're working on. Spent
yeah,
time talking to you about it. He took an interest in other writers.
and he
He
would
had the
sit.
humility to do that.
Yeah, he did, and he would sit, like he would have that songwriter night every Wednesday, and I think most Wednesdays he would be there listening to people for, for 3 hours at least every Wednesday, and you know he had heard a lot, and I sympathetic to other writers, um, and I can't imagine being there, because there are a lot of people who aren't very good, and they can sometimes get good, and I haven't always been very good. I don't think I would ever, I think about how could I ever do, I don't think that I could, but he did it every week. He did it every week. And he's even people that maybe weren't, great. He listened to all of them, and he loved it.
He
He
gave them his
loved it.
full attention. Yeah.
And yeah, and that is, there's never been anybody like that since that I know.
Yeah, we need more people like that for sure. Definitely need more people like that. And but yeah, when I see the impact of certain people on other people, I want those people to get their flowers. And so, like
Mm.
I've listened to the songs about Kent and Lloyd and the other musicians, so I really wanted to kind of get into your brain a little bit on tributes, because that's not something you hear on the radio, right? In mainstream music, you don't hear tributes to people on the radio. So I love that you're able to do that within your independent and freedom and all that.